Well, here we are. Another year gone, another year coming. Just like last year, I suppose. Man, I hate to sound cliche, but this year has flew on by. I mean, really, I feel like each passing year just gets faster and faster and faster. God only knows how long it's going to take when I'm 70 years old. Probably 365 days. Who knows? Yeah. It's kind of funny when you think about it, how one sliver of time can separate a moment into two totally different eras. Like one moment, it's 11:59 on December 31st, 2019. You blink your eyes, then bam, it's 12 o'clock, January 1st, 2020. Just like that, you switch decades. I'm making this video right now in 2019. That's the 2010s. A lot of you guys will probably watch this video in 2020. That's the 2020s. 10s, 20s. That's a whole decade right there. I don't know. Kind of base level stuff, but it's really kind of funny when you think about it. One little moment separates so much. And I think that's why this coming new year has a lot more weight than any of the previous New Years. Because this time, it's not just a new year, it's a whole new decade. And a lot of you older viewers are probably just thinking, oh yeah, I've seen so many of these, yeah, whatever. This is probably, like, only the second time I've ever even experienced this. Little story time here. I remember when I was in first grade, in 2009, I went on Christmas break, right? And Christmas break goes from like Christmas and then through New Year's. And so then when I got back, I was so used to, whenever I was writing out the date, I would go like, for instance, 11/6/09. And when I got back, sorry, it was 2010 because, the new year had passed. So then I kept on writing 1, I don't know, 15010. Like, before I realized about '09, then I started putting '10. I don't know, it's kind of a funny moment for my life. I bet a lot of you are wondering, where the hell is this kid going? No, don't worry. I'll tie it up. I'll tie it up. Bring it full circle. Yeah, so this new year, I thought, it really deserves something grand, a grand finale. Something to end off the year and start up the decade. And I've been thinking about this for a while. How can I take advantage of this special occasion? And then it hit me. These are the last days of this whole decade. What if I did a video about the last albums in artists' careers? And I got a pretty good list of them. And normally, the earlier career of most artists is seen as superior to a lot of their later work. But I found a pretty solid list of albums. And so I can't wait to share them with you guys. Now I present to you the top 10 best final albums to end off 2019, to end off the 2010s. Let's get this started. Our first final album also happens to be the first of quite a few tragedies that we'll be going over in this list. I hope you all don't mind. Nick Drake's Pink Moon. Now, Nick Drake, like many artists, was a tortured soul with a song in his heart. But also, like many artists, he was completely unappreciated for his art at the time. In fact, I once heard that before drugs stole his life away, he was telling a friend that he would only be recognized for his music after he died. And sadly, that turned out to be true, but I'm sure it would give him great joy to know that his music is still being loved by people today. Bleak, desolate, yet stirring, Pink Moon is an amazing folk album, and I couldn't leave Nick Drake off this list. Okay, I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't listened to much of the Smiths. I know my dad loves them, and I do know that they made one of my favorite songs of all time, How Soon Is Now. So in retrospect, considering that information, I should really know more about them. but I just never really had the time to get into them. I don't know why. But after listening to this album, Strangeways, Here We Come, definitely going to get more into them next year. Or I guess tomorrow, depending how you see it. And originally I only put this album on because it was a very recurring entry in all of the lists I found on the internet of best final albums. But then I listened to it, and then I realized, oh yeah, it totally deserves to be here. Strangeways is just vibrant, colorful, fun, interesting, and really versatile and diverse too. Such an entertaining listen. I was kind of surprised, especially since Morrissey gets kind of a bad rep. Um, but yeah, really great album. The only reason why I'm not putting it any higher though is because I think it would be a little ingenuine to place an album higher than some others if I've only listened to that album once. But still, amazing record. If you ask any guy about my dad's age who the biggest band in the entire world was in the early 90s, without a doubt they'd say Nirvana. You could say that they were basically being hailed as the greatest rock and roll band in the whole world since the Beatles. And that's not my opinion. That was the reception they got. They were treated like kings. Nevermind was a masterpiece. And I'm sure that everyone at the time would agree with that statement, except for one guy. And that one guy was Kurt Cobain himself. He thought that Nevermind was too poppy, too polished, and didn't truly represent the real Nirvana. He wanted something raw. He wanted something aggressive. He wanted something primal. So he made In Utero, Nirvana's final album. It's really comforting to know that before he left us, Kurt was able to craft an album that accomplished his mission statement. An album that let loose. An album that just went against the mainstream. An album that reflected all of his hardcore punk influences. Most critics will tell you that Nevermind was Nirvana's best album, but if Kurt was still here, bet you $100 he'd tell you In Utero. I remember the first time I ever listened to this album, and I was just thinking the whole way through, what the hell is this? Is it math rock? Is it metal? Is it spoken word? To be honest, I think the only way to categorize it is this is Slint. That's all I got, man. Who knew that four teenagers from Kentucky could create something just so purely original as Spiderland? I'm telling you, never underestimate the Midwest because when you don't got a lot to do, you create stuff for yourself to do. And oftentimes you create masterpieces like this. Remember when I was talking about the Velvet Underground and Nico a couple months ago in April? Well, this is the same feeling to it. Spiderland doesn't seem to draw from any outside influences whatsoever. It just seems like that these four dudes are isolated in a room with just their instruments and tried to make something that was completely their own. And it works. I'm surprised I love this album, but I'm so happy I gave it a chance. Sadly, it would be their last gasp of air because they would soon disband, but this is still one of the most influential albums of the 90s. You can't talk about Closer without talking about Ian Curtis's death. If you don't understand or you don't know what was going on with Ian, then I highly suggest you go inform yourself, do a little research on him. So then, whenever you listen to Joy Division, you will be able to understand how much emotional weight their material has. This would only be Ian's second album, but it would also be his last. So young, just cut down so soon. Just such a sad story, it really is. This album is so ominous in every way. From the title, Closer, from the album art of a funeral or tomb, to all the lyrics, just how cold and empty and icy they are. Yet despite how monotone and hollow they may seem, after you realize what was going on with that man, they just get so much meaning to them. Ian Curtis was a guy who just had a really, really troubled life. But I'm just so thankful that he was able to bless us with his wonderful music. Rest in peace, Ian. Electric Ladyland is on here simply because it's by Jimi Hendrix. Do I need any more explanation than that? It's by Hendrix. I could just cut the clip right here if I wanted, but I like the sound of my own voice. I mean, Hendrix, he was such a genius who accomplished so much at such young an age and left us so early. Everything he did was mind-blowing, and Electric Ladyland is no exception. Look, I'm probably only the 2 billionth person to ever say this, but there's a reason why the Beatles are the greatest band of all time. You want proof? Just look at Abbey Road. Okay, during the recording of Abbey Road, all 4 band members were constantly fighting. The Beatles, as we know them, were falling apart. They were breaking up. Yet when you listen to this record, Abbey Road, that's not what you hear. What you hear is a tight, cohesive, structured group of artists that were crafting masterpieces, even in their final days. Come together, something. Here Comes the Sun. I Want You. The whole Abbey Road suite is just masterpiece. The End. Hell, I even like Octopus's Garden. And I'm not joking. I love it. This is probably one of my favorite Beatles albums of all time. And I can't think of a stronger note to go out on. So many bands, they come in like a lion, but then they come out like a lamb. The Beatles, they went out like a roaring tiger. Abbey Road rocks. So have any of you guys ever met anyone that didn't like Johnny Cash? That right there is a trick question because those people, they don't exist. Everyone loves Johnny Cash. Even people that don't like country music, even they like Johnny Cash. How can you not like Johnny Cash? I mean, how can you not love Johnny Cash? The Man in Black is an American icon. He is the definition of solid and real. His music is timeless, and that goes without saying. Everyone loves Johnny Cash. So when he was recording his final album, his final album, American 4, was comprised mostly of covers. But don't let that fool you because he owns each and every cover on here. His final album, American 4, was comprised mostly of covers. But don't let that fool you because he owns each and every cover on here. Especially Hurt. And in case any of you guys are keeping track, yes, Hurt is another one of the songs that openly made me cry. You're a robot if that song don't make you cry, man. Let's just say first time I listened to it, local convenience store ran out of tissues. I'll tell you that much. Heart-wrenching. Oh my gosh. Just such a good song. Oh my god. I could talk about Hurt all day. Beautiful. But yeah, he owns each and every cover on this album. And he gives each his own personal spin and makes it reflect upon his own life as he was on his deathbed. Johnny Cash was a legend, but sometimes even legends must leave us. But that doesn't mean they die, because as long as we love the music of this great man, the Man in Black will never die. Leonard Cohen's You Want It Darker is the look into the mind of a man who is staring God and death right in the face. and yet has no questions. He knows exactly what's going to happen. He's going to die. And he doesn't want to die. He's scared to die. Who isn't? But he also knows that eventually everyone is going to die. And so, as he's on his deathbed, he just accepts it. And there's something just so dark, yet at the same time so beautiful and admirable about the way he approached death like this. Over the course of the entire album, he reflects back on all the pain, all the grief, all the loss, all the mistakes, all the tragedies that had occurred in his life. And yet, as it was reaching the end, he was still satisfied with it all, despite all that tragedy. Because he was just happy to have been able to live the life that he did. He also knew that every life is a story, and he had been satisfied with his story. And he knew that all stories have ends, and that his was reaching its. And so, as he was satisfied with his story, he was satisfied with its ending. All his questions had been answered, and his life had reached a fulfilling conclusion. So he just stared at God and death and said, "Come take me. I'm ready." Believe me when I say this, never has there been a more impactful, well thought out, or more magnificently sweeping, majestic, graceful, closing artistic statement as David Bowie's Blackstar. He was a 69-year-old man dying of cancer when this was made, but he didn't seem to let his condition hinder his performance, even in the slightest. In fact, he almost seemed to use cancer as means to pursue the perfect way of ending his career. Unlike most other celebrities, Bowie didn't inform the public eye of his situation. He kept the whole thing a secret, and he did that on purpose. He did that so when the listeners would listen to his lyrics, they would decipher the messages inside and come to the realization on their own that Blackstar was David Bowie saying goodbye to them. That's just ingenious. It really is. That is proof right there that our starman was pushing musical boundaries until literally the day he died. David Bowie was the definition of an artist. He lived for his music and he died for his music. I like to think, cliche as this sounds, that David Bowie didn't really die. He just went back to his home planet because he truly was not of this earth. Goodbye, Starman. Thank you for your beautiful music. We hope you're having a nice time up there. Well, guys, that's my video. I hope y'all liked it. I can't believe it. My last video of the entire 2010s. A whole decade come and gone, just like that. It's been a good 10 years. I'd like to thank y'all for all the support, all the views, all the likes, all the comments. It means so much to me. It really does. And let's hope for a good 2020. Catch you on the other side, I guess. See you next year. Bye.